Hello, church family. My name is Rachel, and I'm here for another Common Grounds this week, here with my cup of cold brew. Let us know below, are you a coffee lover, a tea lover? Neither? Are you just here to hear from the Word of God, to hear from different people within the church and what's going on? It'd be really cool more and more to be hearing your interactions, your thoughts. This past week, when we talked about Deborah, and as we're going through Judges, what things are you being convicted of? What things is God stirring up in your heart? What praises are you being able to give over to Him in this time? Whether it's a tough season that you're in, a season where you're questioning things right now, or just a season full of excitement. How is God speaking to you? Or if you're not really sure where His voice is or how to find it, what questions do you have to be able to interact with the sermons more and more? Well, I hope that these videos can be a way for you to do that. Although we'd love to hear your thoughts to be able to interact and meet our audience better, I hope that just hearing through different people within the church, like myself, Mitch, Joe, Sarah, whoever might step onto these videos, that could be a way that God might be working in conversation and in thought for what God might be doing outside of the sermon. He starts to work on the sermon Sunday morning, and then throughout the week as maybe we dive into that word a little bit deeper and find what it means for ourselves. So I want to take a moment with you to just sit down and talk through this week's judge, Deborah. Pastor Joe talked about her, and just to quickly reel you in and catch you up on what's going on. As we know, Israel in history goes back and forth between a place of not serving God, of being against Him, and in this time and place they were worshiping idols. And so God put the ruler Sisera over them and kept them held down because they were in sin. We see this wrestle going back and forth, and Sisera and his 900 iron chariots were oppressing the nation of Israel. However, we do see that Israel finally comes to a place of repenting and crying out to the Lord, and that's when the cool story takes place. In the same way, when you and I are humble, we recognize our sin, we recognize maybe what idols we place in our life, and then we cry out to the Lord, asking for His help, even if we're not exactly sure what ways we're disappointing Him. It might not be as obvious as the idols that we saw in the Bible in this time. When we cry out to the Lord to be humbled by Him, this is when He can come in and do really powerful things. So that's not exactly all that I want to talk about, but just to give the general gist of that story. So, as we know, Deborah was the judge of Israel in this time. And once Israel cried out to the Lord heard their cry and wanted to save them and bring refuge to them once again because of their humble hearts. Deborah called out for a man named Barak. He was a military general. He came to Deborah to ask her what they should do to have Sisera not be taking over Israel anymore and controlling them with brutal and bad, terrible forces that allowed them not to live free lives, but to be oppressed instead. And she told him where all the Israelites should go. She told them where to send off to, and that the Lord would be with them. Then he asked her in return, "Are you coming?" She said, "Yes, I will come with you." But the one thing that stands out to me here is she told him that Sisera would not be killed or would not be taken away from Israel by the hand of a man. Instead, it would be by the hand of a woman. Now, when you hear this initially, you think, okay, well, it's going to be Deborah who does that. But one thing that stands out to me here is it's not Deborah. Although she is hearing this from the Lord, she is a prophet who got this message from the Lord and shared it with Barak. She is actually knowing that it will be just by the hand of a woman. And in what way we can see God fulfill that prophecy is very cool. Later on in the story, we see another woman bring Sisera into her tent after the whole army of Canaanites who Sisera was controlled by were killed off. He tried to escape away. Another woman took him into her tent and killed him. So the main thing that stood out to me in all this is God's power is not limited. It is not limited to who it can work through, whether it's a man or a woman. It is not limited to what gifts people might have. It can work through anyone. And so as I was thinking of this, I know that I'm in a season right now where I have to be okay staying home and raising Marceline and not always making it to church, and that's hard, and I get a lot of questions on that. And sure, I want to be there, but I have to ask myself, do I want to be there so that I can pray over somebody and have healing come about? Do I want to be there so that I can lead worship and bring hearts to the Lord? Or am I okay with God working through my husband, through Pastor Joe, through Sarah, through just the congregation in general? Does it have to be me? And that's something that God has been bringing true humility to my heart in. God's power is not limited to me. It's not limited to you. And so I challenge you to think through, what biases do you have against certain people, certain groups of people? Do you think God can't work through children? Do you think God can't work through somebody who is in a different class system than you? Do you think he can't work through man or woman? What walls have you put up, whether it's through just church hurt or whether it's through things that you grew up believing? What walls do you have in place? What biases do you have up to think that God can't work through you or can't work through other people? And I would challenge you to continue opening up your heart to the Lord, to know that he can work through you. He has giftings for you when you are his child and when you surrender your heart to him and want him to speak through you and work through you. And I also challenge you that if you have some pride built up that it's got to be you that God works through, to just lay that aside. It can be someone else, because in the end, is it really about us and our glory, or us being the hero of the story? Or is it about God and his glory? And can we be excited to see other people bring that about? So God's power is not limited. Do we believe that? And are we okay with God working his miracles through someone else and not ourselves, if that's what we struggle with? Or are we okay with God working a miracle through us and not somebody else, if we're somebody that has sat back and doubted for so long that he might have a gift for us? So I challenge you to think, what side are you on in that? What doubts do you have? What walls or biases do you have put up so that God can start to break those down and have his glory come about? As we see, Deborah is there to serve the Lord. She is there to share with Barak this prophecy, and in the end she rejoices with a song. She is so glad that his prophecy came about, that his promise was fulfilled, and that he freed the people of Israel. Although we see later on in history, he keeps having to free them, oppress them, but he keeps coming through and saving them until he sends his son to die on the cross for them, which is the ultimate sacrifice. But that's what we need to be living for, knowing that Jesus came down to die on the cross for us. Is he who we want to see glorified? And are we excited for him to work in whatever ways it is, whether it be through us or not through us? And I just was thinking about it this week. I feel that I myself have in mind what certain ministries are. Even though we say that our daily job, wherever we are, can really be a ministry, do we truly believe that? Do I believe that just being at home and praying for other people and being with Marceline, singing with her, being so excited that God gave me to her is my ministry? Do I truly believe that? Or is there still a part of me wrestling with that, thinking that I should be leading worship, thinking that I should be praying over people? Now, those are powerful things. and I don't want to close those doors when I'm given the opportunity to do it. But for where we are and what season we're in, are we looking at it as our place of ministry where we can speak truth from, where we can allow God to work through us, and where powerful things can happen through? The last thing I want to challenge you with is just the fact that comparison is the thief of our joy. And I believe that when we really, truly allow God to work through us and through others, we experience joy. Are we comparing ourselves to others? Are we putting on labels that we're a victim because of what we were born as? A woman, a man, a certain race, a certain background, a family, adopted, whatever it may be. Are we putting on an identity of being a victim? Or are we putting on an identity of being a child of God and being exactly who He meant us to be, being who He meant us, being where He meant us to be, and being okay with the gifts that He has granted us? When you really think about it, doubting that place is doubting God and what He's working through. So let's continue to encourage each other for what roles we're in. In the church, are there different roles that women and men have? Absolutely. But is His power limited to a certain person? I don't think so. So I challenge you to think on that, to stop comparing yourself to others, but rather to get a new lens and to encourage one another exactly for the giftings they have, where they are, and what God is doing through them. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you enjoy yourself a nice cup of coffee for just to pick me up, and I pray that you can get into this word a little bit more and see what ways God could be speaking to you through it. Thanks so much and have a great week. Bye.